Well, welcome back then to the AHB Figures YouTube channel. Sam Turner here with you, along with co-host Andy Holding. And in this evening's vlog, we're going to just have a quick skip through Andy's life-changing multiple bet, a Lucky 15 or a Yankee. 4 selections then across Cheltenham week, all of which are tidy prices, according to the list I've got in front of me, Andy. And you fancy your chances of a nice big payout here, then, I gather?
Life-changing in theory, Sam. Never normally works out like that. Life changing in the sense you probably have to go to the bank manager quite swiftly afterwards and ask for a loan.
The bailiffs will be after your TV. But anyway, look, we're going with plenty of optimism, and we're going to start with day one, aren't we? And the Arkle Chase. Now, in all essence, this looks a bit of a shootout, doesn't it, between Nicky Henderson and Willie Mullins? But you feel that it might not necessarily be an ergamine, which is worth putting in this Yankee or this Lucky 15.
Yeah, I'm basing my thought process really on going for Franco de Port, on the theory, my theory anyway, that he would have been a relatively close-up second, or maybe even given Ergamine a better race than he did. Actually, no, he did finish second, I beg your pardon. It would have been an even closer second, that's what I'm getting at, had he not made a bad mistake at that second one going down the back. You've got to revisit that race really and go back and have a look at the error he made. It wasn't really anything to do with him or his fault. It was just momentum really that allowed him to sort of peck on landing, and he lost probably about 3 or 4 lengths. Got shuffled back from being in a good challenging position in third or fourth towards the rear. And I thought he did really well to finish second. And yet nobody seemed to sort of take notice, went a little bit under the radar. And it's meant that he's coming into the Arkle like a 20-25 to 1 shot. When in theory, I think he should be a good bit shorter than that. I'm not saying for certain he's going to turn around the form with an Ergamine. But put it this way, wherever Ergamine finishes, I think Franco de Port, given that the way that the race is likely to pan out, the way it panned out in Ireland, it should be no worse than 4 or 5 lengths behind an Ergamine. And that, I would think, would be good enough to finish in the first 3 or 4 in the Arkle. Obviously, you've got to take on board the likes of, Shiskin and All Mankind being in the race as well, 2 very high-class horses. It's a very good Arkle this year, as we've touched upon. But I do think Franco de Port is the value of the lot. And for the purposes of this each-way Yankee, he could get us off to a fair start if he nudges in the first 3. I'm not sure whether bookmakers will be betting first 4 on the day. Depends on how many runners there are. So you could wait out and hang fire to see closer to the time whether there is like a double figure field and there are 4 places. And if there is, I think that would be extremely enticing. But it's my strategy in the first race. Whether I look to bet without the favourite or, like I say, try and get as much as I can out of Franco de Port hitting the frame. That's my sort of game plan anyway going into the Arkle this year.
Okay, we should stop 20 to 1 while we record this. That's with William Hill. I don't think they're non-runner no betters yet, but 16 to 1 with other firms freely available and non-runner no bet as well. So we suggest that you perhaps put your each way multiple on with those sort of firms that non-runner no bet, because that obviously makes perfect sense a couple of weeks away. Most firms now have moved to that concession. Sort of Corals, Ladbrokes, Sky Bet, Betfair Sportsbook, etc. A good number of them have. So it probably won't be long before Hills do either. But if you want the top price, you're willing to take the chance. 20 to 1 with William Hill. Right. So that's Franco de Port. Very strong stare at 2 miles. You'd be hoping that he'd be charging up the hill as well, Andy, wouldn't you? Because ideally, he probably wants a good test of stamina and a strong pace at 2, doesn't he, to produce his best?
Well, he fits a lot of the stats, doesn't he? Away from the fact that he was an unlucky second last time out. He's trained by Willie Mullins. He's a Grade 1 winner. He's won at Leopardstown. He's run round Cheltenham, albeit not to a great success, but at least he's been there. And like I say, I also see how the way we run will be run to suit him. He's not necessarily going to be ridden to pick up the pieces, because I don't think you want to be going into a Grade 1 championship race just, it's all right if we finish in 3rd or 4th. But he is a hold-up horse, and he won't want anything to do with the early pace. So he's going to get the luxury of seeing what's going on ahead of him, and he will be finishing as strong as most towards the end. So I'll be fairly confident of him getting us off to a fair start.
Okay, fair enough. That's all you can ask for 16, 20 to 1 chance, isn't it? From the sublime to the ridiculous, not quite, but from the pace novices chase of the Arkle, the 2 mile, the speed, and electrifying pace of that race, to a rather different test in the concluding race on day 1, the National Hunt Chase. 3 mile 6 now, of course, no amateur riders. So fingers crossed we don't see any scenes that we have seen that beset this race in previous years. But Longhouse Poet is the second leg of the Yankee here.
Yeah, he's been quite popular in the anti-post markets in the last fortnight. Quite rightly so as well. A lot of people have gotten onto this fella. And I suggest you sort of back him now if you're doing a multiple bet or even looking towards having a single on him now, because I think he'll go off single figures for several reasons. First of all, I think his form's better than certainly what price he was put in at in the first place. But more importantly, I think there'll be lots of non-runners that are ahead of him in the market, including Royal Pagaille, latest exhibition probably, next destination more than likely, Ascaria 10. We don't know whether he goes down the handicap route. And then you're delving into some horses again that we either might not see or they might go elsewhere. So I think he'll shorten just organically because of non-runners. Another thing as well, Martin Brazel's going through a really good patch at the moment. I've noticed a lot of his horses recently over in Ireland are running really well. He's had 2 winners and a second from his last 3 runners. They all seem very healthy. He's winning with big priced outsiders, which is always a good sign. And Martin's very shrewd when he brings a couple over. I mean, he's won obviously the Ballymore a couple of years ago, didn't he? At grade 1 level.
Yeah,
City Island. It's not too far down the road that obviously number 6 Valverde won the national for him. So he is very much a big race trainer that probably doesn't get a lot of credit, or he goes under the radar. And his form's very solid as well, Sam. He ties in with the likes of Cocoa Beach the time before. And last time out at Punchestown, I thought he stayed on very well to beat Run Wild Fred, who's a very strong stayer, and the big dog, who went on to win a Grand National Trial, Irish Grand National Trial next time out.
Yes. And of course, finished second, didn't he, Cocoa Beach in the Thyestes, did he? Was it second?
He won the Thyestes, didn't he, Cocoa Beach?
Sorry, yeah, Run Wild Fred, sorry. He finished second.
Yeah. Well, they finished first and second in a Thyestes. Espinita Bella, the horse that beat Cocoa Beach among our folk, probably would have beaten Cocoa Beach had it not made a bad mistake at the last. If you go back and look at this horse's form from last year as well, he took part in the Ballymore, thought highly enough to run in grade 1.
I fancied him to run a big race there. I was really disappointed with him, unfortunately, but maybe that, I don't know, he'd had quite a hard season, hadn't he? He had a bit of a headbanger against latest exhibition a month or so at Naas. Leopardstown, and maybe that took the edge off him a little bit. Yeah,
and he's obviously got a touch of class running those grade 1s against Envile and latest exhibition, as you mentioned. Plus the fact that he's run against a very good standard and obviously over fences, but more importantly, he's always looked as though he wants a trip. He's always looked as though he wants a test, a proper stayer. So I think the 3 mile 6 journey will be ideal for him. So all in all, he's going to shorten up. He's going to be one of the main players on the day. I'm not sure who's going to ride. He's a guaranteed runner, barring accidents between now and then. He could do with the ground being ideally soft, or at worst good to soft, which he should get. There's a lot of things going for him. He's 12 to 1, generally speaking. So, as I said, he's another value option in that national chase.
Yeah, just a shame no amateurs, because otherwise Derek would have booked, wouldn't he?
He would have ridden him. Yeah, but I'm sure Martin Brazel's got plenty to choose from. There'll be plenty of agents ringing him up looking for the ride.
Yeah, absolutely. On to day 3 then. You picked some nice easy races here, because with the Johnny Henderson Grand Annual is leg 3. And a horse that I've got a little bit of time for, albeit he's yet to win over fences, and that's on Tukas, trained by Joseph JP McManus colours, obviously. A couple of very eye-catching runs this year, not least when sort of aggressively ridden again at Leopardstown in a very competitive handicap chase last time.
Yeah, he's threatening to win, isn't he? Again, another horse that's dined at the top table. He's run to an incredibly high standard against some of the best novices over in Ireland. He's dipped his bread a couple of times in handicaps, and he certainly hasn't looked as though he's anything other than well treated. His Fairy House run, there was a litany of mistakes down the back which cost him, and it was uncharacteristic of him because he's been very proficient up to that point. And I thought fourth he could have probably bettered that position had he not made those mistakes. But then he was much better Leopardstown the other day in a proper run race. But he jumped really well. He probably just hit the front a little bit too soon. They tried to ride him forward, and in the end that didn't pay off because we had a fast finisher that came and picked his pocket. But that form looks very strong. I think that's the best 2 mile handicap chase I've seen so far this season. Comes out well on our figures. Virtually every time he's run to a high number, 65 or over. He's a high cruiser. Don't forget this race is run on the inside track on day 2 rather than the new course on the last day. So that track should suit him as well. It's a little bit more complementary to horses who've got more speed than stamina, which I think he's got. So yeah, he fits a lot of the criteria you look for. He's a first season novice. Novice has got a good record on the race. I think he hasn't run more than 4 or 5 times over fences, which is another thing you need to look at.
Just 5, yeah.
I think I've got a favourite as well, Sam. Again, another one that I see shawning up on the day. I'm not sure whether Sky Pirate will run, and even if he does, I think he's run behind All Mankind now has rolled him out regards. That's been a well handicapped horse. So yeah, and Tukas, again, another one that I'm certainly confident of him short in the market, and this is what this piece is all about. We're trying to highlight horses, A, with the chance, B, that I think are going to shorten dramatically closer to the time.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And, the handicapper rated that a career best performance from him as well, if you look at, various ratings. And I think, like you, he's the kind of horse that wants to sit in the first 6 or 7 and then try and give it the kick 2 out. So, you know what I mean? He's not going to be one of those cruise quicken horses. I think, speaking to connections and people closely associated with the horse, they feel he's better ridden aggressively, and that's why he was a little bit at Leopardstown. But I think they could probably get him a little bit better than he was there. He hasn't been overfaced this year, and if we're taking that as his best performance at Leopardstown, he's only got to improve a few pounds perhaps, and he'll be right in the mix here. So he fits a lot of the different stats as well, doesn't he? Obviously being the novice, etc., and a horse that jumps pretty cleanly and races on the speed. Shouldn't be too much of a negative for him. Leg 4 then of the multiple, we go to the Pertemps, another simple race to solve. And I also know that you're extremely keen on. You've been talking about him for a while now in these anti-post previews with Cheltenham in mind, and that's the Boss's Oscar, who qualified with a fine second at Leopardstown in the qualifier there.
Yeah, no real prizes for originality here, Sam, with regards price. I'm nominating the favourite, but I think he's a very strong favourite. I think Connections have had this race in mind since he finished 5th in last year's boys' race. If you go back and watch that race as well, he missed the break at the start. It was very one of those standing starts, and he sort of shied back a little bit, and he found himself towards the rear, and he never really recovered. I think he had 3 or 4 behind him turning for home. But he started very eye-catching at the run into 5th, so he's had an experience of running over the track he's going to run over on the Thursday, and the new course, of course. And he's done nothing wrong with his 3 runs over hurdle so far this season, very much geared around this race. Placed on his first 2 runs, behind Flooring Porter, of course, at Navan as well. Don't forget that at the time before, which is not looking too bad form. But yeah, I mean, it was typical Gordon Elliott, wasn't it, last time? Obviously, he's going to be running in a different training camp, isn't he? I'm not sure which one yet. I can't confirm that yet, but it looks like he's going to be running in a different training camp. But yeah, I mean, that was a massive eye-catching run in that Leopardstown race. It was a good time figure, or solid time figure. It wasn't off the scale, but it was a solid time figure. But more importantly, again, looking at the circuit sectionals, it was a good race compared to Flooring Porter, which is always the same every year. And that Pertemps qualifier has chucked up, I think, the last the last 4 winners have all come from that qualifier. Right. Delta Work, Cider Burley twice, and the one the previous year as well. Can't remember its name now, but it's just been a tried and trusted formula. Obviously, in nominating this horse, I was thinking, well, obviously it's a Gordon Elliott horse, trained for the race specifically. Obviously, that's slightly shifted, but
Yeah,
it's still the same theory, isn't it? It's still, the horse is still going to run to the same level, isn't it? You'd imagine. So yeah, he's probably the linchpin of the four. I think if we get some each way cash rolling onto him, and at the moment a lot of firms are betting 5 places. You'd be disappointed if he's not good enough to finish in the first 5.
Yeah. What do you see his particular strengths are, Andy?
A high cruiser. He goes through his races really well. I think the 3 miles has been the making of him. I think he's always looked quite relaxed over the 3 miles. I think when in the 2.5 mile races last year, he was just a little bit on his head and always getting a bit outpaced. But he seems very very repleted stamina wise. You can pretty much put him anywhere in a race. He acts on any ground, as far as I can see. It was obviously fairly decent enough last year's festival, and he handled that. And he's handled heavy ground. So from an anti-post perspective, or a couple of weeks off, you're not really bothered what the conditions are like on the day for him either. And he's an uncomplicated type as well. He's not a horse that pulls hard or does something silly in a race. So yeah, he's got a lot of good things going for him.
Yeah, and as you alluded to earlier on, he's been around Cheltenham already and gained some valuable experience there.
That's it. Yeah, I mean that's another factor as well. I'm trying to go for horses who've been around the track. Sometimes it's impossible to do that, but yeah, course form and in particular that new course, that long run from 2 out to the line. If you've come up the hill strongly like he did last year, it's a good sign that they'll do it again when revisiting it at the festival.
Yeah, from a point-to-point background as well. Who would you like to see riding? Obviously, Brian Cooper, Jack Kennedy, Sean O'Keefe, they've all been on him this year, I think, or have ridden him in the last 12 months, say. Yeah,
I mean, in advance, I would have thought, David Russell or the Bowen injury would have been great. But yeah, I mean, Jack Kennedy's fine, gets on really well. Just Eddie Jockey, really, that's got a degree of track quality, track craft, and a bit of patience.
Yeah,
you don't want to be hitting the front too soon in the Pertemps as well. I've noticed that's another factor. Yeah, most of the winners are delivered down to the last. That you can't hit the front sort of three from home, 2 from home. There, that you need to be sort of in that sort of challenging group, no more than about 4 or 5 lengths behind, and then make your move on that long run to the last.
Yeah, just sit, and then sit again, isn't it? That's the key.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, let's just run through that quartet then. Obviously, the Arkle on day 1, we've got Franco de Port, who's the top price 20 to 1, but 16 across the board. Then Longhouse Poet in the National Hunt Chase. I think he's 12 to 1 at the moment, pretty much across the board. So that's a bet. And Tukas in the Grand Annual, around about a 10 to 1 chance. I think that's pretty uniform as well.
Yeah.
The final leg of the quartet is the Boss's Oscar in the Pertemps, and he's 7 to 1 across the board. So you should be able to get on, a decent Yankee here, even if you have to split it up. I think it comes to a fair few quid. I think if it manages to win, I think the Acker's well over 20,000. So you should be able to get non-run and no bet and not have too big a hit on the prices. Is what I'm trying to allude to.
Yeah, I mean the main fundamental about the bet really is to try and pick horses I think will run their race and be in the frame. They've all got profiles to suggest they will do that. You look at Franco de Port, he's always been banged there this season, last season. And Tukas is always in the first 2 or 3. Boss's Oscar, you've got string of 2s, 3s, 1s by him. So is Longhouse Poet. He hasn't been out of the frame so far over fences. He jumps well, touch wood. So yeah, it's just an exercise in thinking about 4 relatively solid ones at a price. And not everyone's going absolutely bonkers on that. They're not sort of massively sexy, or they're coming here with no great expectations around them as such, or certainly at the current moment in time, other than the Boss's Oscar, you could argue.
Yes, I was going to say he's been prominent in the list for a while, hasn't he?
He has, yeah.
Okay, that's brilliant, Andy. Thanks very much for revealing your each way Yankee for the Cheltenham Festival, and thank you for joining us again on the Andy Holding Speed Figures channel on YouTube. We look forward to speaking to you very shortly with another of these videos prior to Cheltenham. Bye for now.